My wedding dress was replaced with a cheap gown before ceremony. "This suits you better," my mother-in-law said. I smiled. "You're right." I wore it and tore it in front of everyone. The room went silent, and she was speechless from shame, so. Yeah, this happened 3 months ago, and I'm still processing the whole thing. My friends keep telling me to post this story because apparently it's wild enough that the internet needs to hear it. Here goes nothing. I've been with my now husband, Jake, for 4 years. Sweet guy, works construction, loves his mom maybe a little too much, but I figured that was normal. His mom, Patricia, though. Man, she's been a piece of work from day one, always making little comments about my job at the local bank, my apartment, my cooking. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make me feel like garbage every family dinner. When Jake proposed last Christmas, Patricia's first words weren't congratulations. They were asking if we'd set a budget yet because some people have champagne tastes on a beer budget. Real classy, right? But Jake just laughed it off and said his mom was being practical. Red flag number 1, but love makes you ignore a lot of nonsense. Planning the wedding was like walking through a minefield. Patricia had opinions about everything. The venue was too small, the flowers were too expensive, the caterer wasn't good enough. She kept suggesting her friend's daughter, who apparently threw the most elegant wedding on a shoestring budget. I started calling her the wedding police behind her back. The dress shopping was where things really went sideways. I'd been dreaming about my wedding dress since I was like 12, scrolling through Pinterest boards and saving pictures. I wanted something classic, but with a modern twist. You know, the kind of dress that makes you feel like a total queen. I found the perfect one at this boutique downtown. It wasn't cheap, but I'd been saving up for 2 years specifically for this dress. Ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, a fitted bodice that made my waist look amazing, and this gorgeous train that wasn't too over the top, but still made a statement. Patricia came with us to the final fitting, which should have been my second. Red flag. She kept making faces in the mirror behind me, whispering to my mom about how dramatic the dress was. When the seamstress was pinning the final alterations, Patricia pipes up with, "Are you sure this is what you want? It's very much." I should have told her to mind her own business right then. Instead, I just smiled and said it was perfect. The seamstress agreed. She said I looked like I belonged in a magazine. That felt good until I saw Patricia rolling her eyes in the reflection. The night before the wedding, I was staying at my parents' house while Jake stayed at his place. Old school tradition, you know? I'd left my dress at the venue in the bridal suite since we were getting ready there anyway. Patricia offered to pick up some last-minute decorations and drop them off early, which seemed helpful at the time. Looking back, I should have known she was up to something. Wedding morning came, and I was actually feeling pretty zen about everything. My bridesmaids showed up with Starbucks and those little breakfast sandwiches. We were blasting Taylor Swift, doing each other's makeup. The whole vibe was perfect. Then it was time to put on the dress. I walked into the little side room where my dress was hanging, and my heart just stopped. There was a dress there, but it wasn't mine. This thing looked like it came from a discount costume shop. White polyester with fake lace trim that looked like it would fall off if you breathed on it wrong. The sleeves were puffy in this really dated way, and the skirt was so short it barely hit my knees. It looked like something from a 1980s prom disaster. Update. The comments asking if I immediately called the boutique. Yes, that was my first move. They confirmed my dress had been picked up by someone claiming to be my mother-in-law. The plot was definitely thickening, and I was seeing red. But wait until you hear what happened next. Should I have confronted her immediately, or played it cool? I'm standing there in my underwear, staring at this tragedy of a dress, when Patricia walks in like she owns the place. She takes one look at my face and has the audacity to smile. "Oh good, you found the dress I picked out for you," she says, casual as anything. "I thought this would suit you much better, more appropriate for a simple ceremony." I'm trying to process what she just said. "Where's my dress, Patricia?" She waves her hand like it's no big deal. "That thing was so over the top, honey. This is much more suitable for someone in your situation." She emphasized situation like I was some kind of charity case. My bridesmaids had gone quiet behind me. My maid of honor, Sarah, was looking between me and Patricia like she was watching a tennis match. The whole room felt like it was holding its breath. "My situation?" I managed to get out. "Well, you know, a simple bank teller marrying into our family. We wouldn't want people to get the wrong impression about your background." And there it was. The mask was completely off. This woman had stolen my wedding dress and replaced it with this discount store nightmare because she thought I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I could have screamed. I could have called the police. I could have demanded she tell me where my real dress was. Instead, something ice cold settled in my chest, and I smiled. "You know what, Patricia? You're absolutely right." Her eyebrows went up. She was clearly expecting a meltdown, not agreement. "This dress is perfect," I continued, picking up the polyester disaster. "It suits me much better. Thank you for thinking of me." Sarah was giving me a look like I'd lost my mind, but I winked at her. She knew me well enough to know I was plotting something. I put on that ugly dress. It was too big in some places, too tight in others, and made this weird crinkling sound when I moved. Patricia looked so smug, like she'd won some kind of victory. She kept saying things like, "See, much more appropriate," and "You look lovely, dear." The ceremony was starting in 20 minutes. Everyone was already seated outside in the garden. Jake was probably wondering where I was. Part of me felt bad that he was going to get caught in the crossfire of whatever I was about to do, but honestly, it was about time he saw exactly who his mother really was. "Patricia," I said, adjusting the cheap lace on the sleeves. "Would you do me a favor and gather everyone inside? I'd like to say something before the ceremony." She looked confused but pleased, probably thinking I was going to thank her publicly for her help. My bridesmaids were all staring at me like I'd completely lost it, but they followed along. Within 5 minutes, everyone was crowded into the main reception hall. Jake, both sets of parents, all the aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, even the photographer who was snapping away. Jake looked confused, seeing me in a completely different dress. But before he could ask questions, I stepped up onto the little platform where the DJ booth was set up. "Hi everyone," I said into the microphone. "Before we head outside for the ceremony, I wanted to share something with you all." The room went quiet. Patricia was standing near the front, still looking pleased with herself. As you can see, I'm wearing a different dress than the one I picked out months ago. That's because my future mother-in-law decided to replace my dress with this one. I gestured to the polyester nightmare I was wearing. She said it was more appropriate for someone in my situation. Update. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. Jake's face went from confused to horrified in about 2 seconds. His dad was staring at Patricia like he'd never seen her before. But I wasn't done yet. Would you have stopped there or gone full nuclear like I did? Patricia's face was starting to change. The smug smile was fading into something closer to panic. She clearly hadn't expected me to air this publicly. Patricia told me this dress suits me better because I'm just a simple bank teller marrying into her family. She was worried people might get the wrong impression about my background if I wore something too nice. The murmurs started then. I could see people turning to look at Patricia, and not in a good way. Jake's Aunt Mary, who I'd always liked, was shaking her head with this disgusted expression. So I wanted to thank Patricia publicly for reminding me exactly what kind of person I'm dealing with. I smiled at her, and her face was going from white to red. "Because you're absolutely right, Patricia. This dress does suit the situation perfectly." And then I grabbed the cheap lace at the neckline and tore it right off. The sound it made was horrible, that ripping polyester noise that's like nails on a chalkboard. But I kept going. I tore off the puffy sleeves, ripped the fake pearl buttons, right off the front, pulled apart the seams at the waist. Within 30 seconds, I was standing there in my slip and this destroyed polyester disaster around my feet. The room was dead silent except for the photographer, who was apparently living for this drama because I could hear his camera going crazy. "There," I said into the microphone. "Now it suits the situation perfectly. A cheap, fake dress for a cheap, fake gesture." Patricia looked like she was going to faint. Her mouth was opening and closing like a fish, but no sound was coming out. Jake's dad had his head in his hands. Half the room was staring at me like I'd lost my mind, and the other half looked like they wanted to applaud. "Jake," I said, looking at my future husband who was just standing there in shock. "Your mother stole my wedding dress and replaced it with this because she thinks I'm not good enough for your family. So I need to know right now. Are you going to stand there and let her treat your wife like this? Or are you going to be the man I thought I was marrying?" That snapped him out of it. Jake walked over to his mother, and his voice was quieter than mine had been, but somehow scarier. "Mom, where is her dress?" Patricia was still doing her fish impression. It was inappropriate." "Where is her dress?" "In my car," she whispered. Jake turned to his cousin Mike. "Go get it, now." Then he walked over to me, took off his suit jacket, and wrapped it around my shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm so sorry. She had no right." "You're right, she didn't," I said. "But thank you for standing up for me. Finally." That last word probably stung a little, but honestly, it needed to be said. Mike came back with my real dress, still in its garment bag. My bridesmaids helped me into it in record time, and you know what? I looked absolutely gorgeous. Better than I had in any of the fittings because I was practically glowing with righteous anger. The ceremony happened, but it was definitely not the atmosphere anyone had planned. Patricia spent the whole thing staring at her hands while people whispered. Jake's dad apologized to me twice during the reception and promised Patricia would be writing me a formal apology letter. The photographer later told me he'd never seen anything like it and asked if he could submit the photos to some wedding blog about dramatic moments. I said absolutely. But here's the best part. During the reception, I overheard Jake's Aunt Mary talking to some of the other relatives. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Patricia had pulled something like this. She'd made Jake's cousin return her engagement ring because it was too flashy, and she'd actually shown up to his brother's wedding in a white dress. The family had been putting up with her nonsense for years, but somehow watching me tear apart that dress had given them permission to finally say something. By the end of the night, Patricia was sitting alone at her table while everyone else was dancing and having a great time. Even Jake's dad was avoiding her. Justice served. Update, 3 months later, and Patricia still hasn't spoken to me directly. She sends messages through Jake, who's been much better about shutting her down. We're thinking about moving to the next town over just to get some distance. But here's my question for you all. Was I too harsh, or do you think she got exactly what she deserved? Jake and I are doing great, by the way. Turns out, watching your new wife publicly destroy a dress while defending her dignity is apparently pretty attractive. Our honeymoon was amazing, and he's been way more aware of his mother's behavior since then. We found out later that Patricia had told several family members I'd insisted on changing dresses because I realized mine was too much. She was trying to control the narrative even after everything. But thankfully, about 50 people witnessed the truth, so that didn't work out for her. The formal apology letter never came, of course. But Jake's dad did quietly slip me an envelope at Christmas with enough money to cover what I'd spent on the original dress. He said it was from both of them, but I'm pretty sure it was just him trying to make up for his wife's behavior. The wedding. Photos turned out incredible, by the way. You can actually see the exact moment in Patricia's face when she realizes I'm about to go nuclear. The photographer called it the shot of the year. We got a discount on the whole package because he said the drama made for such compelling storytelling. These days, family dinners are a lot quieter. Patricia makes polite small talk and keeps her opinions to herself, mostly. She did try to make one comment about our apartment being cozy, code for small, but Jake immediately shut it down. Progress. I've gotten a lot of messages from friends who heard the story asking for advice about their own difficult in-laws. My advice is always the same. Don't let anyone treat you like you're less than you are, even if it means making a scene. Especially if it means making a scene. Some people said I should have handled it privately, but honestly, Patricia was counting on me being too polite to call her out publicly. She was banking on me just quietly accepting her disrespect, because that's what she was used to from everyone else in the family. Sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to embarrass them, right back. The best part is that I absolutely loved my real wedding dress. It was everything I dreamed of and more. I felt like a queen walking down that aisle, and not just because of the dress. Because I'd stood up for myself and my marriage started with my husband actually defending me. Would I do it again? Absolutely. In fact, I kind of hope Patricia tries something again just so I can remind her what happens when you mess with the wrong person. But something tells me she learned her lesson. Sometimes you have to tear something down completely before you can build it back up the right way. My relationship with Jake's family definitely got torn down that day, but what we've built since then is much more honest. Patricia knows exactly where she stands now, and everyone else knows I'm not someone who can be pushed around. And honestly, that cheap polyester dress tearing apart so easily was the most satisfying sound I've ever heard. Way better than any wedding bells.